Hey everyone! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Antoinette. You can call me Twana if you want to. So today is Tuesday, which means we're gonna do another Pride look. Today's blue. We're gonna do blue today. I actually got a new blue eyeliner from ColourPop, and I really want to do some kind of blue eyeliner look, but I'm not really sure what I want to do yet. Let's start with priming my eyelids. I'm using the Tarte Shape Tape in the color light neutral. So I'm filming on Father's Day, which if you guys know me like personally, like you'll understand why today's not the easiest day for me. For those of you who don't know me, my dad passed away a couple years ago, so today is not the easiest day. I think today is going to be more of a serious video just because I'm not in the most playful mood. Today I decided that I was going to wear this blue shirt with Darth Vader on it because my dad loves Star Wars and he actually got me like into Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I actually have Darth Vader tattooed on my arm. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. I didn't plan it out at all, but I want to use the Blue Blood palette by Jeffree Star. It's a completely blue palette, so let's just use this. Let's pick a brush and we can start having a conversation. This is the Urban Decay Moon Dust brush. It's a E210. I'm gonna go in with I'm Cold. And then I think I'm gonna put this at the outer corner, which is called Blue Blood. I figured today we could go down that road, let you guys get to know me a little better about my dad and the story of, you know, how he passed and whatever. So a little background. My parents got divorced when I was 9 months old, so all I've known is basically my parents not being together. They both got remarried, so I have a stepmom and I have a stepdad, and my stepdad is great. He's amazing. I'll talk more about him later. He's really been, you know, a really great dad to me, and he's always wanted me to have the best of everything, so I really appreciate that. My parents actually got divorced because my dad was a drug addict. My mom threatened to take me away unless he got sober. So he started going to rehab and getting his methadone. If you guys don't know, methadone is like a more controlled heroin substitute. It's supposed to help you get off of heroin, basically. I remember going with him when I was younger and we would go get his methadone. I would wait in the waiting room and I would watch TV with the big security guard. He would always have these like horror movies on, which was really funny because I probably as like a 4-year-old shouldn't have been watching that stuff. I remember it clearly, my dad and me walking into the hospital and going to get his methadone. He eventually got sober, and he was sober for about 11 years. He actually met my stepmom, I think I was 5, so he was still like newly recovering. They met on like a dating website or whatever dating stuff you would do in the early 90s. I don't know if there were like websites because the internet wasn't like it is now. They met. My stepmom has 2 kids, so I have an older brother and sister. They hit it off right away, and they got married in 2000. Everything was great up until like my senior year in high school. That's when the recession hit, and my dad lost his job. And I didn't know this back then, but I know this now. Money issues was a big trigger for my dad. He was making really good money. So just imagine they were very financially free and then he lost his job. That was really hard on the family. So he kind of basically started smoking weed, which is like not a huge deal for like a lot of people, but for a recovering addict, like my dad didn't even drink alcohol, so the fact that he started to smoke weed was not a good thing because he was using a mind-altering substance. I know that a lot of people think that when they hear weed is a gateway drug is like something stupid. Like, I get it, but for like an addict, it is a gateway drug. My dad started smoking weed. That's how he started to get into drugs. If you don't have like an addictive personality or you're not into like hard drugs, that's one thing. But like my dad had a very addictive personality. So he started to smoke weed and that lasted a while. The timeline isn't very good for me just because like I've blocked a lot of this out of my memory. I had a very difficult childhood. I used to watch my dad do drugs and stuff, so me and my stepbrother and sister didn't know that he was smoking weed. My stepmom knew, and she was just trying to keep it from us so it wouldn't cause any like issues, but it eventually came out. This led to my dad and my stepmom, you know, having issues because my stepmom is a very non-drugs kind of person, which is totally fine. I'm totally okay with that. She went into this marriage assuming that he was drug-free and that he wouldn't be doing drugs anymore. So the fact that he was doing drugs was obviously not okay. His personality started to change. I'm pretty sure he was probably doing other drugs because he got violent at some points, and you know, weed doesn't really cause violence, so, but who knows, maybe it was having an interaction with his antidepressants. That's another thing. My dad was mentally ill, so he had anxiety problems, depression issues. Gotta thank him for that because I've been suffering from that shit my whole life. This led to eventually him trying to commit suicide. He took a bunch of pills, like a lot of them, and decided that he wanted to go riding on his motorcycle. Well, he didn't make it past the garage because he started his motorcycle and passed out, and he burned his leg on the motorcycle. My stepmom wasn't home, but she came home and found him in the garage, and she said he was like bloated from all of like the pills I guess he was taking. So she called an ambulance and took him to the hospital. If you would have seen him in the hospital, you would have thought that he was on some kind of sedative or something, but they didn't put him on anything. That was just him on drugs. That was just him with the pills in him. That was the worst thing that I probably could have ever seen in my life. After that, my dad swore that he would like stop smoking weed or whatever. I'm trying to remember the story, but it's just hard for me to remember, so I'm just gonna fast forward to a few years ago. My dad started to really go downhill with his mental health. My stepmom wanted to try and do like counseling and stuff, and he just like wouldn't go to couples counseling or anything like that. So eventually my stepmom filed for divorce. I'm not sure when the divorce went through, but I know that they got divorced and they were still living in the same house just because they were trying to figure out selling it, who was gonna move out. But while this was all happening, my dad was falling for some kind of scheme online. You know when you get those emails of the like people from Africa like saying like, oh, you inherited this, or like we have this money and if you like invest, whatever. So he fell for one of those ploys. And he probably, I can't even tell you how much money he gave them. It was probably like over $100,000. So my stepmom basically decided that she was gonna leave and freeze their bank accounts because she didn't want him taking her money. And my dad's mental health just took a horrible turn. I'm not blaming this on my stepmom at all. She completely should have left. I have been on her side throughout all of this drama and problems with my dad. Like, I've never thought that she ever did the wrong thing. My dad would constantly call me, leave messages. I was in contact with him, and all he wanted to do was fight, basically. So eventually I was just trying to, like, what's the word? Like, separate myself from him, I guess, just because, like, he wasn't the same person anymore, and I felt uncomfortable, like, talking to him about my stepmom and my stepbrother and sister, you know, because I was still in contact with them. They were still part of my family. I still loved them, and I never wanted to, like, talk bad about them when they never did anything wrong in the first place. So, and my dad would never call me to ask me how I was doing. He would always just call me to, like, complain if something was happening. I actually want to rewind a little bit because I feel like I'm just saying bad things about him when in reality, like, my dad used to be my best friend. He was still my best friend up until he passed away. So he was the one guy in my life I knew could do anything, and I could count on him for anything. He's the reason why I know how to work on computers, fix technical issues, build things. He was just like an all-around awesome person, and he actually worked for a construction company, so he knew, like, all about kind of construction and stuff. And he built his entire basement when he moved into his house, and he actually built his own home theater. I'm gonna put up pictures if I figure out how to put pictures up. That was something that we would do together. We would watch movies in his home theater. That was, like, one huge thing that we would always do together. Another thing is, like, I would watch him play video games, which I, like, still love to do now, like, with my boyfriend. But I'd watch him play video games, and I called myself the co-pilot because I would always help him figure out, like, where to go and what to do. He was one of the smartest guys I've ever, like, met in my life. One of the funniest guys I knew. I just loved him. I was always a daddy's girl, honestly. I knew how much he loved me, and when he started to do drugs again, like, he just changed, and he just wasn't the same person anymore. So that was really hard. I'm just gonna try to put this eyeliner on. I don't think that I'm gonna be able to talk while I'm doing this, so. All right. I did my eyeliner. I'm gonna do my eyebrows while I'm talking. So it got to the point where my dad would call me, like I said, just to, like, complain about stuff. And I eventually told him, like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. Like, I'm not your therapist. I'm your daughter. You never ask how I'm doing. The last Father's Day that I tried to see him, he wouldn't get out of bed to see me, so. Just because he took medication for his back pain. And he wasn't awake enough to, like, realize I was even there. So, that was awesome. On that day, I went out to eat with my stepmom and my boyfriend, and we had a good time, so whatever. In January of 2018, I cut all contact with my dad because we got into a huge fight, and he basically told me that I should go find a new father because he didn't know who I was anymore. So about 6 months later, I'm visiting my grandfather in the hospital, June 2nd, 2018. My dad actually had gotten arrested for harassment. I don't know how far before then, but he'd gotten arrested and he was on probation, and he had to check in with his probation officer, like, I think weekly, and he never showed up for his, like, weekly check-in. So my cousin called me and was like, we don't know where your dad is. My dad, which was my uncle, has been trying to get in contact with him, and he's getting, like, these weird, like, Facebook notifications of, like he was getting messages saying that, like, my dad was in the Philippines. I don't even know. It was just really weird. I was with my mom that day, and I even told her that this was not normal. Like, my dad would disappear, but it just didn't feel right. So I called my stepmom, and she actually still was able to see like what temperature their house was when they were out. Even though she didn't live there anymore, she could still see like the temperature on her phone. And she said that, so this was on a Saturday, she said since the past Monday, the air conditioner hadn't been on, which was like weird because it had been like 90-degree days, and there's no way that my dad wasn't like using the air conditioning, you know? So it was just like a red flag. My dad was also fostering a dog, so he wouldn't have had the dog in the heat. We knew that just something wasn't right. Also, my dad had rented a car because a few weeks beforehand he had gotten into a car accident, and his car was in the shop, and he was supposed to return the car that week to pick up his car from the shop, and he never returned it. So we all knew something was wrong. So I was in contact with my uncle, and I actually told him what my stepmom had told me, and I told him, you know, you should call the police and get them to do a wellness check because he's just like not answering, and like the air conditioning isn't even on in the house. We weren't sure if like he had gone somewhere or we just didn't know. And for those of you who don't know what a wellness check is, it's like when you're worried about somebody, they're not answering you, whatever, so the police go to the house to check that everything is okay. I was worried, so my boyfriend took me to Walmart just to get my mind off of everything. I'm gonna put my concealer on. And as we're getting to the intersection to turn into the Walmart parking lot, I get a call from my aunt, who's my dad's brother's wife. I answer, and he starts out with, "Hi, Antoinette, like, how are you? Da 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 da." And I'm just like, well, I'm worried, like, what's going on with Daddy? And she, you know, paused for a second, and she was like, "That's why I'm calling, like, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but they found him dead." And that was just, like, a shocking thing to hear. And instead of being, like, really upset, which is like a normal response, it was just like, I figured. That's what I said to my aunt, because I just like, I didn't know how to react to that news. So she's like, "I'm so sorry, like, I don't want to be having to give this news to you, but my uncle, you know, your uncle asked me to call you because he just couldn't do it." I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna call my mom. So I got off the phone with my aunt, and my boyfriend was like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "They found him dead. My dad died. And they found him." And I just didn't know how to act. And my boyfriend pulled into the Walmart parking lot. I called my mom, and I just broke down on the phone. That was probably the hardest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. So basically, we figured out that my dad had actually been dead for probably a week, and nobody had found him until that day. So he probably passed away on the 26th of May, and he had been just laying there for a week, which is like horrible and like makes me so sad to think about, because like nobody deserves that. I'm just gonna put the color I'm Cold underneath my eye. This is the Enduring Eyeliner Pencil by Limelight. I'm just gonna put it in my waterline. So my dad was automatically cremated because he wasn't in the condition to be put on display at a week or anything, or to be buried in a coffin. About a week after he passed away, I picked up his ashes, and they kind of sat on my table for a while. I ordered a wooden urn for him, and he actually sits in my living room. I have like a whole shrine, I guess you could say. Which is funny because in my dad's house, he had like a whole shrine dedicated to me, which was funny. We had like a memorial for him and everything. We actually didn't know his cause of death until the following September, but we did find out that he passed away from a drug overdose. He had cocaine in his system and opiates. So I'm assuming it was his pain medication, but you never know. I'm just putting the ColourPop mascara on in the color Blue You Mind. Yeah, he did pass away from a drug overdose, which is really sad because, you know, he was sober for such a long time and then he started doing hard drugs again, which was like terrible. And to this day, I still feel guilty about his death. I felt like I could have done something about it. Maybe if I hadn't ignored his phone calls for months, I could have prevented it or something. But like, I needed to do that for my own mental health. He was very harassing. Like, he was harassing me and my stepmom. He never had a nice thing to say to me. So, I mean, when he, you know, started to spiral, I'm pretty sure he was bipolar. Like, undiagnosed bipolar. That's the story of my dad and how he passed away and the history of everything. I don't talk about this with a lot of people, but I guess now the entire internet knows. So I'm gonna go in with my bronzer and blush palette by Limelight. As much as I was mad at him and whatever, I don't want people remembering him for the shitty stuff that he did, because he was still my dad, and regardless of the mistakes he made, I will always love him. And he was a good dad up until, you know, the point where he started to do stupid stuff. So I don't want you guys like judging him or anything. I'm just sharing this story with you guys, I guess, as a way for me to vent and feel better while I'm filming a YouTube video on Father's Day. I miss him and I wish he was still around. He'll always be my dad. My dad was always my best friend, so. And it sucks that he's not around anymore. And it sucks that before he died, he just wasn't himself, because I really wish that he was around and himself, because I miss him like that. So I'm sorry to make this video depressing or sad or whatever, but as silly and funny that, you know, as I could be, you know, my life hasn't been the easiest, and today is a hard day for me. So I hope you guys can understand why I put out this video talking about my dad and like the history of everything, and why today is such a hard day for me. My Opa, which is my grandpa, that's what you call grandpa in German, he actually passed away 10 days after my dad. So I've never had a real opportunity to really mourn the death of my Opa, because I've been dealing with the death of my dad. So I really miss my Opa too. And he was just a really great grandpa, and I miss him a lot. But, you know, shout out to my stepdad for always being there for me and stepping up when my dad kind of just couldn't be the greatest dad he could be. My stepdad has always been there for me, and I appreciate everything he's done for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, as serious as it was. You kind of got to see another side of me, I guess. I hope you like my look. I think I'm feeling this blue look, honestly. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate your support. Comment down below if you like this look, what you want me to do in the future. Like this video so that I know that you enjoy watching my videos, and please subscribe. I really appreciate you subscribing to my channel. Thank you for all my subscribers so far. And I will see you guys in the next video. All right, bye guys. Bye, 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 bye.